And as he says, my name's Jemima Parker. I'm the Chair of Zero Carbon Harrogate, and if you haven't come across us as an organisation before, we're your local climate action charity, and we've been around since 2016, and we are trying to encourage the whole of our local economy, our residents, our businesses, all organisations to take action as fast as possible in light of the climate emergency that we are in. So we have a kind of strapline of educate, engage and support. And I guess this evening is part of our education and engagement programme, in that we would like you to be able to engage with your local mayoral candidates and to become more informed about how we can decarbonise our local economy. And in terms of support, our retrofit project is one of our kind of premier projects. We've been providing training for local tradespeople and professionals in the housing market, in order to try to stimulate and provide the skills for widespread retrofit across our local area. We are, as the local climate action charity, politically independent. We're apolitical. We engage with politics, but we are not party political. And I hope that provides an opportunity for us to hold the ring this evening. We are very grateful for the three candidates who've come this evening for giving of their time. And we are disappointed that the three other candidates standing for the mayoral post have chosen not to attend, or have other priorities that they're attending to this evening. Yeah, that is a disappointment for all of us, I think, because it would have been good to be able to pose similar questions as we have to them. And I would just like to say that I want to thank these three for being prepared to come and face questions. And as Tim said, we're hoping that you will be respectful of the fact that they're giving of their time for standing for this very public role, and will be courteous in the way that we treat them, and we listen, and we take on board what they're saying, even though we may not always agree with everything that's said. So I hope we can do that this evening. So the plan for this evening is that we're going to start by giving Paul and Felicity and Keith the opportunity to have 3 minutes to give a presentation to you, to put forward their policies and ideas on our environmental theme. And then we will move to a time for questions. And we've had a large number of questions submitted in advance. So we'll work our way through those questions, which those of you who are registered have kindly submitted ahead of time. And we'll try to take those sort of thematically. And if there's time, we may be able to get to questions from the floor, but we'll see how we go. And then at the end, I'll ask the candidates just to give a quick sum up at the end, to have the opportunity to have a sort of final statement. So without further ado, we will hand over to, and I should have thought about how we're going to do this. We should go probably in alphabetical surname order, just to be fair. So that's Felicity, Paul, and then Keith. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your timing. Good evening, everyone. My name is Felicity Cundiff-Lister. My vision for York and North Yorkshire is for the region to be a thriving hub for investment, research and skills, to achieve carbon zero targets and to be biodiverse and sustainable, and for the region to get our fair share, for central government to level up its funding and commit to investing in our potential. And for all of us, my vision is for us to be able to live in a low-carbon home we can all afford, in a sustainable community and on a salary that supports our family and our well-being. My commitment to the environment and net zero is borne out on my business record. My business was the first hotel in the UK to install a carbon-neutral biomass boiler in 2006. This year alone, I've planted 30,000 trees, which forms part of our 20-year commitment to increase our tree cover on the estate by 50%. We achieved green in the Investors Environment Scheme last year, and working with Yorkshire Peat Partnership, we've restored our peatland with drain blocking, revegetating, and planting sphagnum moss. I'm a Yorkshire businesswoman. I'm the only candidate with the leadership, business experience, and skills that are essential for this role. I'm a politician with a career, not a career politician. I started my career as a commercial property lawyer in the city, where I specialised in development, investment, and acquisition, with several high-profile projects, including the London Eye. Aged 30, I moved to the Yorkshire Dales, where I bought a derelict castle with my husband and turned it into a hotel, which is now Swinton Park. Since then, it's doubled in size and now employs 150 people. I've grown and diversified the business with the addition of a cookery school, country club and spa, self-catering cottages, and an off-grid campsite. I also help run the Swinton estate, so I'm familiar with the world of agriculture, forestry, and conservation. I'm a proud mother of 3, an active member of the community, and a county councillor. And I stand for giving local communities a say in what they want and need, holding power to account and getting our fair share, and ensuring everyone has an equal opportunity in life and that no one gets left behind. My manifesto pledges are to deliver safer and stronger communities, better health and well-being, and an improved transport system. I will build more affordable and more energy-efficient housing. I will campaign for clean water and reduce flooding. And I will deliver more of the skills that we need. I will also deliver investment to drive growth in the enterprise sector, support tourism and hospitality, and drive investment into our national capital. As your mayor, I will be a facilitator, collaborator, and a champion for the region. I will form partnerships and share resources both within and across the whole of the North, and I will be the region's representative at Westminster. I will deliver change for the better. I will drive sustainable economic growth, and I will demand a better deal for us all. I will be proud to be your Yorkshire champion. Thank you.
Not quite as tall. This election is probably the most important election for the last 50 years for York and North Yorkshire. It's a massive opportunity for us to boost the fortunes of everybody in this room and everybody in our county and in the city of York. It's important because we have an opportunity to grasp funds to be able to take ownership of our own destiny and move forward. So what can it bring? What can the mayor bring? First of all, it's about bringing better transport, whether that's active transport or whether that's a public bus service related to the train. We've got to have an integrated service. It's about boosting the economy, getting better, green, relevant jobs to the area, and then training people so that they can take the good jobs that come here. It's about having jobs that will retain the great students that come out of our university. At the moment, we lose young people from this area because we do not have the quality jobs that we need for this area. So there's a lot of opportunity there. It's also about building affordable homes, not only affordable to buy, but affordable to run. So if you do the retrofitting or the houses are built correctly in the first place, which is my preference, then you're going to have average running costs down for energy down from £3,000 a year to less than £1,000, making it affordable. And these houses have to be in the right place. So why am I standing for this role? Well, I'm standing for this role because I am fed up with the status quo. I am fed up with the fact that we're not changing things fast enough. The glacial pace of change in North Yorkshire it's just terrible and it's frightening. and we need to get on with things. Just to give you one example, the spend on transport in the South East and London is 6 times what it is per head here. I checked the figures earlier this year because I'm Transport for the North. I chair Scrutiny of Transport for the North, I should say. And that ratio hasn't budged. Now, okay, somebody might say, but I've been a councillor for 7 years and what have I been doing? Well, I've been trying to move it and it's not moved. I believe that the mayor is the key person to start to move and bring all this money that we need into this area to boost our fortunes and to take control of our destiny. Why did I leave the Conservative Party? Because I know that will be on some of the thoughts here. I left the Conservative Party because of what's going on centrally, I'll just be 2 seconds, but also because they were not driving change fast enough, and we need that change. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. We certainly need change because all the other candidates are either from a political party or from council background, and that's what they still do. I'm totally independent, self-funding my campaign. If I was elected, I will not claim expenses and I will donate a minimum of 10% of the salary each year to good causes in North Yorkshire. My background, ex-police officer over 20 years, working in the community, supporting people from all sorts of the worst kind of situation, working on major investigations, firearms team leader, detective. This role as mayor also includes the Police Fire Crime Commissioner, of course, which is very, very relevant. I wouldn't be doing that. I did stand for that in 2021 as an independent, and I will delegate that to a deputy, which is the normal practice, and leave them to get on with it. But obviously I will appoint the right person because society is in a mess. It's breaking down. With all due respect to Harrogate, it looks a bit of a mess, to be quite frank with you, and they've got issues and problems. In relation to my background, I also went on for 10 years to work in business banking, and I've also been in the community, somebody who has worked from Paisley Bridge, which isn't too far from here, to have a high street, which like all those was starting to fail, started a campaign leading it and winning the best high street in the whole country. And I did an e-book for the government on how to revive flagging high streets. I then chaired the Britain in Bloom committee, which the council said you can't win because they've changed the category. We won the national Britain in Bloom title in every category. Became nominated each year, Sunday Times, best place to live for 3 years in a row. That was down to leadership, but also working with the people, whether it be the schools, which I involved in the projects to do with Bloom, people with water, but people with sensory gardens outside the church for people. I'm a patron of Dementia Forward. I was fundraiser of the year for Yorkshire Ambulance for the North of England. I'm doing it for the right reasons because we've got to start doing something for all our young people, the elderly, who really are all being abandoned. And they are. So we need to create, with this fund, the money. I will raise additional funding because I think we've got a very poor deal. We've only got tier 3. Our negotiators who got it weren't that good. Every other authority has gone straight to tier 4, which is far more money. I will create a separate mayoral fund with high net worth individuals, charities, businesses who will donate to that. I've had those conversations. I've had conversations with the housing associations. They see my vision. We will create immediately on brownfield industrial sites, modular homes, £60,000 straight on. They're frustrated because they can't get through the planning process. If you elect one of the councillors or the politicians, there will be the continuous tribalism between York, which is more at the moment Labour, and Northallerton, which is Conservative. They will never agree on anything. I will be the conduit, I'll be the gap. I will make sure that I work with them, of course, you've got to do, but also start to drive and lead. And I've got that background, so thank you. And ask a question, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a bit loud, wasn't it? Sorry. And thank you very much, all three. As I say, we've had a wide range of questions submitted, and some of these are quite generic or wide-ranging, and some are quite specific. And I think it would be unfair for some of the specific ones to expect you to know the detail or the background of them, so just saying that ahead in case you feel put onto the back foot on those. But we're going to start off with some fairly generic questions, and I'll try and do this so that We rotate round who starts, so we will start with Paul, I guess, this time. We'll rotate. Brian Appleby. Brian, do you want to give us a little wave? He has asked the question, how aware are you that climate break is accelerating? And please explain why you've reached this conclusion. Oh, how aware are you that climate change is accelerating? And please explain how you've reached this conclusion.
I'm not sure I follow the question. It assumes that I've said that climate change is accelerating. I think it's quite obvious to lots of people that climate change is accelerating. If I'm missing the point of the question, I apologise. The key thing is that we need to be doing mitigation and adaptation to climate change, and we need to follow, we have a plan, let's use it, let's monitor, measure, have targets, and let's find out how that progresses. There will be emergent strategy because not every strategy is going to work, but we do have to make sure that we're addressing the climate change issue. And my policies all do that. And I don't want to take too much time on the mic, but for example, one of my lead policies is to work with the farmers, to work with food production, to work with agri-tech, etc., those type of areas, to help the farmers continue to produce the right amount of food, but also get constant help with how they change to a new style of farming and a new style of land management. And they need our help, but they need to lead this process because they are the custodians. All right, okay. So that's just one example. I could go on. I guess I need to give other people a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm not too familiar with the rate at which the climate change is accelerating, but I'm quite convinced it is accelerating, that we are at the moment not on target to achieve our net zero targets. My commitment is to ensure that the region falls in line with that ambition, and my strategy is twofold really. One is to reduce our consumption of energy, and one is to also generate green energy. So in terms of reducing consumption, it's simple steps, but it's to do with, for me, it's to do with setting up my insulation fund so that houses that need insulation are insulated, and also to ensure that houses that are built better and better insulated to start with. Not only will there be insulation, but I would fund solar panels and batteries to ensure that houses can generate their own heat as well. In terms of, I would support the circular economy. I would support, I wouldn't support, but one of my key deliverables is an integrated public transport system, which will be more efficient, more regular, and better connected to enable more people to use public transport and fewer people to use cars. For those that do use cars, I would also invest in more EV chargers to enable more people to transition to electricity. And then in terms of generating green energy and moving away from the energy sources that we currently use, I would be funding it at both ends of the spectrum. I want us all to generate more of our own energy off-grid, be it within our own households or in our own businesses, but also I would be funding larger scale generation projects as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The signs are there clear. So we've got flooding, problems with farmers' fields, not being able to plant the crops, etc. So the signs are there that we've got problems and issues. It keeps cutting out there. Some are clearly due to man-made problems, such as housing estates being built on land, cutting too many trees down instead of planting more trees. And that's what I would do. I would bring basically the experts into the room. I relate this, that when I was an investigating officer on major inquiries in the police, when I was... Nope. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we pass it along?
Can you hear me now? Yes. So thank you. So I think we've all got a part to play in this, and that's why when I chaired the Bloom Group, it's things like water butts on houses, which are very simple to collect the water, which we should all be doing. Obviously the recycling element of it, and more active travel. You know, Malcolm Margolis is here, who I worked with, and Sustrans to help fund the feasibility study to extend the actual Nidderdale Greenway up to Pateley Bridge and ultimately up to Scarhouse, which would be something that as a mayor I would like to deliver, certainly within my tenure. So all these things, but we can see the signs, we can see, as I say, what's happening with properties, and Yorkshire Water have a big part to play in this, because there's drain off from various rivers which are affecting areas down in Selby and stuff by the way they divert the water. And working with Yorkshire Water, water generators as well. We don't seem to go into water generation, which should be used, in my opinion. And so altogether, it's somebody bringing together. I am the conductor. There's fantastic people in all the areas that we want to work with, you know, and in an orchestra, it's the violinist, it's the trombonist. But ultimately, by bringing them together, you get the result of that fantastic symphony. And that's what I will do as a leader, working with other parties and bringing the experts into the team.
Thank you very much. And thank you for keeping your answers brief, because we have got a lot of questions to go through. So don't feel that you have to go into a huge amount of detail, and be aware that we've got topics coming up on energy, housing, transport, etc. Our second question comes from Arnold Warnican. Hello, Arnold. And again, a more general question about climate change and the economy. Would the candidates agree with me that the climate crisis should be at the forefront of all of the combined authorities' decisions and policy making? How would you ensure this specifically for transport planning, tourism and economy? And we will be coming on to transport questions later, so perhaps you could focus more on the tourism section of that, because that isn't going to be covered later. Finally, you will need to work with the adopted climate change delivery pathway. As the draft document is currently lacking in vision and ambition, how do you intend influencing the final document to make sure it delivers a carbon negative county? And we start with Keith on that one. Quick. Sorry. No, sorry.
Right, I think Arnold's the expert on this area. I'm certainly not, compared to somebody like Arnold Warnican. We need to address so many issues in relation to tourism. Transport is a big problem, because as we've seen at areas like Malham and Grassington, once the season comes around, everybody wants to travel in cars, so we need to be starting to have more of the park and ride type facilities to stop people coming into areas, because that's causing obviously pollution, it's causing mayhem for the residents, etc. I would certainly look at offering areas which hadn't been given double devolution the opportunity to apply for that, so that they can actually have the taxes which they can then spend locally as they see fit to help with projects. And we need to try with transport. That's the big issue, more active transport, cycling, walking, etc. And tourism, I've been heavily involved in it as the chair of the Chamber of Trade, with transport certainly, so that we brought in Dales and Boland Bus Company, which I'm a member of. First brought in 2 buses into Nidderdale. We're now up to 14 small buses, which gives people access from other areas who don't have cars, don't have transport, make it affordable. I will certainly deliver on all transport systems for under 18-year-olds, free transport altogether, to make it accessible in rural areas so they can go to colleges, universities, see their friends, etc. So I think it needs a total transport plan, that's important. And tourism, do things like the Nidderdale Way, brought Claire Balding for 4 days to walk the Nidderdale Way on her BBC4 programme Ramblings. Never paid or anything like that, but it promoted actively walking the Nidderdale Way, brings tourism to the area. But people who are coming not necessarily with the cars or leaving the cars. So initiatives that actually drive so that we protect what we've got. And at the moment, we're destroying it mainly because of the numbers of people and the number of vehicles.
Thank you, Arnold. Quite a few elements to that question. I'll do my best. So the first question was, how would we ensure that the climate crisis is at the forefront of our decision making? And my pledge is for my office to sign up to the SDG goals, so they will underline all of our decision making. In terms of tourism, and for it to be more sustainable and to reduce the impact of it on the environment, there are quite a few elements here. There is already a growing trend within tourism that we really need to do a better job within Yorkshire to capture and to develop. So there is already, because I know this from running my own business, there's already a great deal of interest in sustainable tourism. There is a real demand for off-grid wellness, low-carbon activity such as active and adrenaline activities, surfing, cycling, walking. I have pledged to extend the Greenway from Harrogate to Pateley to ensure that that becomes a key leisure attraction, and there's great potential to do more of those. There's now currently a Moulton, Pickering and Helmsley route that's being considered in the same way. The key to delivering sustainable travel is to ensure that those who visit our region don't arrive by car. If we have a really, truly excellent transport system, there is no need at all for anyone to drive by car. They don't need it when they get here. So for me, that's absolutely key, and that's will be part of my consideration when I'm delivering my integrated transport system, is looking at the way tourists behave, where tourists need to get to ensure that they arrive by train and use public transport when they get here. Last bit was, there's one more element to your question that's gone now. Thank you. Well, yes, and thank you. That takes me back to the SDG goals, the pathway there. The commitment to that will help ensure that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Arnold. I think what's important, if we're really going to sort climate change out, and I don't say that lightly, it's a huge task. We have to have a just transition. It's not just about some people getting through it. Everybody's got to go through it, because otherwise we've got to bring everybody up to a level of standard of living, and that's got to happen. And for climate change to be mitigated and to be the adaptation, we have to take everybody along with us. So that's crucial. So where am I going with this? First of all, my team would have carbon literacy training. Obviously, we would adopt the SDG goals, and as climate change champion at North Yorkshire, I've already stated what my priorities are. So those priorities aren't going to go away if I change job. I'm going to still be following those. But what we have to think about here is, if we want people to do what I'm assuming you all know what modal shift is, but if we want to move people out of cars and onto buses, we've actually got to provide a bus service that's reliable. The number one problem with the bus service is people do not trust it to get them where they want to be on time. It's not necessarily cost, but cost is also a problem. So we have to sort out the transport system. We have to have a fully integrated, and Felicity and I agree on this, that is fit for purpose. And how we get there is going to be an interesting journey, but we will get there, and we will have the funds to be able to do it. So that's the first thing. You have to give people a credible alternative to getting out of the car. The second thing is, within transport, you've got all the active travel options. And again, they have got to be provided, and they have to be safe. 50% of school children want to cycle to school, but only 4 do, because mothers won't let them cycle. So we've got to make it safe. Otherwise, we will not get this virtuous circle of what we want. You asked about tourism. Well, the key thing is, as Felicity said, it's how we get people here. And when they get here, how we help them get around. And if we've got a state-of-the-art transport system, they will be able to relax and leave their car at home. And therefore, that's one of the key ways that I would be affecting the tourism side of the potential damage that they can do when they're here, because it's worth about 3 billion to our economy. It's the biggest industry in this area, aside with food and farming. Finally, you mentioned the delivery pathway. Yeah, the delivery pathway's got to be ambitious. We've got to trial things, we've got to pilot things, but we also know what works. And we shouldn't always be saying there's one new technology just around the corner. We need to use the technology we have. And there are simple, easy wins. And one of the other easy wins for me, in terms of the technology exists, getting it done is a different thing. But retrofitting, our buildings are about 20% of our carbon, yet we have not made a dent in that in over 20, 30 years. And we could easily do it. And we could set up a business that actually, A, is retrofitting like the one behind me, and B, actually manufacturing the materials locally so that the supply chain is a lot smaller. I think I've got there. Thank you.
I think our next question is slightly less multifaceted, and this comes from, moving on to energy, from David Howarth. David, with us? Yeah? Oh, he submitted a question and not come. Cheeky. So David asks, where is all the electricity coming from to power vehicles and heat pumps? And so I think we're really getting at here, what potential is there for the mayor's powers to be used to increase local generation and use renewable electricity? And what would your priority actions be for clean, locally generated energy? And whose turn is it to start? I think Felicity's, yes.
Okay, so where is the electricity going to come from? That's a really good question. The good news is that our region has a great wealth of natural capital, and we have the opportunity to generate our own power here. So I have a number of ideas about how we would get there. For example, in no particular order, I would like to see solar panels used much more effectively on land which is not otherwise generating or delivering any purpose other than, say, parking cars. So where we have park and rides around the ring road of York, I would like to see all of those covered in solar panels. They would deliver the power for the cars that are charging there, but also deliver power for the buses if the bus depots were also there as well. Within each home, we have the opportunity to generate our own power with our solar panels. We also shouldn't lose sight of the fact that hydrogen is another way of storing power as an alternative to battery, and it can be used as store, but it also can be as a source of power. So, for example, I would set my plan and my ambition is to set up a scheme to enable farmers and those who drive heavy-duty vehicles to have solar panels on all their barns and warehouses, and for that power to be stored in hydrogen, which then can be used to drive their vehicles. I will support community hubs. I think it's important for us to generate as much power as we can off-grid so that we're not reliant on the national grid and having to wait for the national grid to upgrade itself. So I will support community hubs where we have opportunities to create our own power generated by wind, hydro and solar. And then at the opposite end of the spectrum, I will support the much larger schemes, draw in the investment required to generate power which will connect into the hub, into the electricity grid also. I think that answers the question. Thank you.
What a great question. The key thing that's wrong with the generation of electricity in this country at the moment, and particularly in York and North Yorkshire, is actually the local DNO, Ofgem, the national grid. It's incredible that they knew this generation of new energy was coming and they've not sorted the infrastructure. But it's not even as difficult as that. It's about they've not organised themselves, they've not got project management in place at the moment. I could announce I'm going to have, 100 kilowatt scheme or whatever. And they turn around and they say, you can't have that until 2034. They are not ready. So one of the key things the mayor will be doing is getting people in the room and saying, how do we solve this problem? It'll be National Grid, it'll be Ofgem, and it'll be the DNOs. And they need to explain. Now, the government's done something towards this already, but it's not enough. But they need to explain how my system at home, which is 10 kilowatts, has somehow got in front of a 100 kilowatt system. They do not regulate it. So the key thing is that we need to be looking at that infrastructure. And then we can go on and do other stuff. I think we should be imaginative. We have houses with a huge footprint. All houses should have solar panels. All new houses should be made sure that if they don't come with solar panels, at least their roofs are the ideal direction, that they will get maximum benefit from that. We need to use every square inch of this area and of the planet in order to maximize what we get from that. So I would be doing that. I would agree that we need to look at businesses. They need to have solar panels. All the time we need to be looking at generation. And we need to look at this in so many different ways. And there are so many opportunities, but we need to get the infrastructure right. And where the mayor will come in is getting that group of people to move this forward, because without that we can't really get forward. There are other things on the horizon. There's off-grid, and there's also green hydrogen. But brown hydrogen is very, very carbon intensive, so we need green hydrogen, and it's how we produce that. And my guess is that solar will be the key to generating green hydrogen in the end. And again, that's a method of storing energy, and that's where we'll get our electricity from. Thank you.
No fracking at all, and use the existing drilling that they've done with the fracking for geoengineering, basically, which it's already drilled, so we can use that. That's been done in other places around the country, which would make sense. I said before, working with companies like Yorkshire Water, I think we need to look at water generators, which we don't seem to invest in, which are very, very effective. All new builds, planning solar panels in the roof, certainly brownfield sites, industrial sites, which I've talked to housing associations about, modular type housing. It's around 60,000, it's very environmentally friendly, very economical to run, can be literally, once the services are put in place, it can be on there within a day, which is all going to mean less journeys for people, because we'll have people with single people, couples, young families who will be nearer to the centres on these industrial sites, so that they can actually go and get a job in hospitality or whatever the industry is. So that's going to save, obviously, on the amount of transport and travelling around. The park and ride schemes need to be made, and whether we put them more like a motorway service station, so it's somewhere that people can go to and all the facilities are there, so it's not some just place that they have a job even if there's a toilet there. And because people at motorway service stations will stay a couple of hours, but there's got to be the transport to go to them frequently. More, as I say, of these local bus companies, and that's important when we talk about every area. We're different throughout the area, whether it be Skipton, Scarborough, Selby or wherever. Each one needs to be a little bit bespoke in how it's looked at, because one size doesn't fit all, and that's very critical in relation to a lot of the things we're talking about to do with transport, environment, housing, etc. So it's something, again, I come back to, it's getting the right people to work in the first 100 days in office, to put a bit of a plan together, to actually then be able to hit the road running. And there's quite a lot of funding available besides the £18 million a year that they're talking about, although a better deal can be negotiated with central government to get further funding. So I think it comes down to those kind of initiatives where we do insulation. It should be mould-free insulation instead of what they do, retrofit, training courses for people who maybe don't get the qualifications, multiply system, which is where they train people over 19 in skills, so they can do things like retrofit, and 70% of those people end up getting a job. So we need to be more visionary, more imaginative, and then we'll help society to build what we want as the model in each community in every area.
Thank you. Right, we're now moving on to a series of transport-related questions, and I'm going to ask that you give very brief answers to these, because there are quite a few of them. There's questions about active travel, and then buses and roads as well. So if we can try and stick to the specific bit and then we'll move on, if that makes sense. So we'll kick off, as I said, we've got several about active travel, but we'll kick off one from Ben Blacksall. Ben, are you here tonight? Oh, somebody else ducked out. Ben puts a good question, which I think is a very local question. What are you going to do on active travel schemes such as the station gateway, where a small vocal minority have used bully boy tactics to hamper the scheme's success? It's key that as mayor, you can stand up for the greater good rather than cave into a small minority. And we start with Paul. Keith this time round. Right. Sorry, Keith. Yeah.
I seem to be up and down rather fast. Station gateway from the offset has been a disaster, and it's badly thought out, badly planned, and now it's virtually a vanity project, costing more money. We've spent over £2 million on consultants, and it's again this disjointed planning and thinking, and it needs to actually go back to the drawing board. If we're doing cycle schemes and active travel, we want them to be effective, not last for 100 metres and then suddenly disappear back onto a road again, or Otley Road where you're on a pavement 1 minute, road next, going down a slope the next minute, on a pavement and the kids on the phone coming out of school, keeping their heads down and people coming to... It's just, they're incompetent, to be quite honest with you, and that's why you need to get somebody who is going to actually work with them and say, a bit of common sense here, and the consultants all benefit from down south. We don't even tender to give local companies this £2 million. So there's something dramatically wrong, and this is the problem. If we're going to stick with the politicians, this is a unique opportunity to bring about proper change, and if it doesn't happen, I'm afraid a lot of things will slide because they will continue talking and not deliver. And again, whether it be active transport, whether it be working with the Tour de Yorkshire, Tour de France, etc., which I've been involved in, we've brought attention to the area, and at that time, amazingly, we get all the roads done. Now we've got thousands of potholes, but when it's, Tour de Yorkshire, Tour UCI, we get all the roads done. I mean, it's just, the politicians want to keep control at both North Yorkshire and in the city of York. It needs that bridge, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm doing it not for ego, not for money. I'm doing it because I'm fed up of the politicians delivering half-baked schemes which then collapse, and nobody gets anything that we wanted. But what we will do is we'll get an increase in precept in tax every time, and we're paying for something, we've paid for it, and we don't get that service. You'll have to excuse me, by the way, because we're doing that much talking, that many hustings. I've got a bit of a sore throat, so I'm having to eat a sweet at the same time to lubricate. So that's my style. It's maybe, won't appeal to everybody, but I'll get things done, and I've proven track record of delivering on those things, whether it be bringing bus services in which they were going to cancel, new bus services which we've now got, or whether it be cycle events, etc., working with Sir Gary Verity and Christian Pruden, which I know it's a name that you might not like, but to be fair, he did put Yorkshire on the map, whatever we think about him. And the incompetent councils kept pumping money into Welcome to Yorkshire, didn't have the foresight to put a charge over Welcome to Yorkshire as a brand, so we'd have kept that. We haven't even got Welcome to Yorkshire, a private company's got it. So if we're going to keep on trusting the politicians, you're going to keep on getting let down, I'm afraid.
I'm glad somebody else is keeping track. Good.
I know Ben's not here. It's a good question, and I agree with him that there was influences brought to bear, and I think one of the things was that the council actually did something wrong, which allowed a weakness. There was an error in some of the counselling processes that went through, but yes, this should have had a better solution for the active travel. So I agree. And as a mayor, I would not be allowing us to make a mistake like that. That then, let's put it this way, parties with more influence or perhaps more money actually can change what is good for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this is an example of some really, really poor decision making. I think where the fault lies with decision making, which relies on consultants to hide behind, using consultants to absolve responsibility for making a decision. And as mayor, I will use consultants, but just for their expertise only, and I will take responsibility for decisions myself. And I will also make decisions when I've convened with all interested parties to ensure that they are engaged in the decision-making process, and also that I do get proper feedback on what everyone's hopes and aspirations are. And in this example, what I would want is to deliver something that's really, truly transformative. I mean, I think what's been proposed so far is so underwhelming. It's more than disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to questions about buses, and we had several questions about buses, and I'm going to just wrap a couple of them together. We've got a more general one from Barbara Rickards. Barbara? No? Okay. How are you going to get public transport into every village, not just the chosen few? And a very specific one from Susan Feist. Susan? Yep. Susan's question is, can we have some seats and bus shelters in Ripon on the 36 route to encourage more people to risk using the bus? At present, they only run every 30 minutes. If one does not come, it is a long time to stand in the rain.
Is it me again?
No, it's Felicity this time.
Okay. Right, so dealing with transport first in the village situation. So what I have in mind, my scheme for our bus network is a hub and spoke style scheme, which will link the bigger villages and the towns to each other, and the villages that are on those routes. So there will be some villages that might fall outside of that, the more remote rural ones, but this is where community buses really play a role. So I will also support community buses because I do think they're vital for the more rural parts. With regard to increasing the number of seats to enable people to sit for longer, of course I'd support that, but to be honest, I'd rather deliver a better service which is more frequent, which doesn't involve standing for too long in the rain.
Sorry.
I'll let you go first, Polly, right? Right, I've got, again, the politicians talk about what they're going to do. I actually say what I've done and what I've delivered in the past. The number 24 bus service, public bus service by Harrogate or Transdev to Paisley Bridge on a Sunday, it was going to be stopped. The traffic commissioners have been notified. They were 3 weeks into that process. I heard about it, and as chair of the Chamber of Trade for Niddale, I contacted Alex Hornby, the chief executive, who didn't know me, and basically arranged the meeting. And he said, we can't stop it because we're 3 weeks into the process. I said, well, what money's involved? He told me the figure. I said, if you give me 7 days and I raise it, will you keep the service on for 2 years? And that's exactly what I did. I went to James Kane at Harrogate Water, who I'd never met before, and negotiated with him. I'm a business background, business banking. I understand what's needed in communities because I also, most probably some may know that we ran as a family the oldest sweet shop on Paisley Bridge High Street. That bus continues today, long after the 2 years that we funded it for, because you've got to lead and show that things can actually work. And as a member of the Dales and Bowland Bus Company, there was no buses coming from West Yorkshire and people couldn't afford to travel. So I worked with the Dales and Bowland Bus Company. We started off with 2 services to start off with. We're up to 14 now. It can be done. There's got to be the ambition, the drive, the energy, the business acumen to do that. And unfortunately, I'll come back to it, the politicians always talk about what they're going to do. I actually deliver, and that is the proof is in the pudding.
It's an enormous county, and we have several different ways of, or we have several different problems. We have urban, we have almost suburban, and we have the very rural. One solution isn't going to fit this. So we're going to end up with a mix of enhanced partnerships. We're going to have a mix of franchises, so it might be Transdev in Harrogate, it might be First Bus in York, and it will be a number of options. And that's what we've got to look for. But I actually want to try and explore some other things. And I think the hub and spoke is probably the most likely. But what I'd like to see is perhaps that we use light freight. I know you're not going to like this phrase, but I'm going to do it. But people and parcels delivered by Amazon. If we actually have an infrastructure that's taking freight, because at the moment, how many different delivery vehicles are there? There's DPD, there's FedEx, and then all the different supermarkets are all trundling out to various locations. What if we could find a way to harness that power to create a better hub and spoke, and it's underpinned by the freight that moves, whether it's post, medication. So I think we need to be innovative. I think we need to think these things through, particularly for the rural areas, but we do need to make sure that those people are involved. And we also need to make sure that it's fully inclusive, that the bus is suitable for me, for somebody who has a wheelchair, or perhaps a sight impairment, for everyone. So we have to make sure that that is inclusive as well. So I'd be looking at what combinations, and I'm just checking to make sure that we put together. And also, we have to think about the additional things. So it's no good having a cycleway into the middle of town if there's no way you can get off your bike and walk around. So we've got to have, we've got to have cycle storage. We've got to have bus shelters because it rains, and we know it's going to rain even more as climate change takes hold. So yes, we've got to think the whole thing through, and it's got to be integrated. And one last thing, and I know I was told not to be too long, is I want to have through tickets. And through tickets mean that whatever the service is that you get on, that ticket will be valid. One of the biggest problems at the moment to the cost of getting to work, particularly on public transport in the north versus the south, and in particular London, is every time you get off one service onto another, you incur another charge. It means that the cost of getting around on public transport is 2, 3, even 4 times higher than it is in the southeast. Thank you.
Thank you. And one last one on transport, which I'd just like to slip in, because we talk a lot about active travel and public transport, but the single largest source of travel carbon emissions in the Harrogate area actually come from the A roads and the A1M. Because of the large volume of fast-moving traffic, the speeds and the volume of traffic. So I'd just like to just put you on the spot and ask what you would do to try to cut those carbon emissions. And we're starting with Keith.
Clearly, we've mentioned about park and ride. We need to make it so that is, York, for example, I know we're here in Harrogate, but York is just a log jam, and when they have something like the Christmas market, people are stuck for 3 hours. So we've got to encourage more and more people to use park and ride and create more park and ride. We need to do things like Malcolm does with his folding bike and goes everywhere, and then able to take it on his bus journey with him. And that's the kind of thing, if you've got room in your car, have a folding bike, and then you can get on that and ride to wherever you're going. So I think there's schemes we can introduce, but we need to then offer people the security for their bikes and things, because at the moment a lot are stolen. Some people won't even bother reporting them. We need proper secure containers, units to actually lodge them in. When we were talking about the Station Gateway project, I don't think I saw anything about actually storage for bikes, which is, in this day and age, you shouldn't have to start putting bolts on it and chains on it and all the other things. You should be able to put it in a little unit, get a ticket or a digital answer, and it goes in, you just roll it in onto a rack and it goes into a sort of storage system. We're just not being visionary, not having enough imagination. So that's the kind of things I would be looking at doing to make sure that we try and reduce the amount of congestion. Building more roads isn't the answer, because it just means we create more of the problem. We need to work a system out, a proper transport plan, which will actually involve all those elements. And there's a lot of experts out there, not me, the ones who are going to, if I'm elected, are going to guide me, because they are the experts in the field. So that's how I will operate.
So I think the question was really, how do we deal with through roads, the A roads that go through in particular? A few obvious things are over the motorways you have these gantry signs. We could actually be just saying there exactly, if you do 60 miles an hour instead of 70 miles an hour, this is how much fuel you save, this is how much carbon you save. A very simple behavioural change. But one of the challenges is, and for North Yorkshire in particular, is 97% of all freight, in fact it'll include York as well, goes by road. So we have to work on the technology that will decarbonise the fleets that are on the road. Thank you.
Yes, if we're talking about the north-south corridor of the A1, I would address 3 issues there. One will be the drivers who are using it for a short distance, and that will be addressed by an improved bus network service and also an improved train service. And for the long distance travellers using that same route, again, I think that lends itself to an improved train network. It is one of the strategic corridors, that north-south route, that is the ambition that needs to be upgraded under the the Powerhouse Rail project. And as Mayor, that is one that I would actively engage with to take forwards. So I would lobby, in terms of improving trains, I would lobby to improve timetable enhancements that we're due following the East Coast upgrade. I'd foster stronger relationships with the key decision makers. That's the Rail Minister, the Transport Secretary, the Northern Powerhouse Rail, the MDs of the train operators and the route directors at Northern Rail. And there are also upgrades that could take place on that north-south route within our region, such as at Northallerton, which would enable more trains to use that route. And finally, with regard to the freight that's on that route, I've already mentioned hydrogen, and I do think that's absolutely key. So again, going back to what I've already mentioned, but I will support the generation of hydrogen on site at warehouses using solar power, and I will also support the generation of green hydrogen in other ways. There's some quite exciting work being carried out at BDC where they're using the AED, the gases generated by AED, where they're managing to deliver hydrogen out of that gas before it reaches the methane stage. So I will be watching that very carefully and supporting it further. Thank you.
AD being anaerobic digestion, for those who were wondering what the acronym was. We're going to move on from transport now and thinking about environmental education and young people. And we've had a question from Christopher Sellers. And Christopher's asked, if you were elected, what would you do to promote both understanding and a sense of responsibility for local environmental sustainability in our local young people? And I think I'd like to just sort of add to that a little bit, and perhaps if you can also speak to how you would best give our young people a voice and influence in decision making. And a stake in a sustainable future for our town and surrounding area. Just to widen it out a bit. And we're starting with Paul this time.
As Mayor, one of the key things, and it's something that's frustrated me since I've been on Harrogate Borough Council in 2014, it's the ability to consult or not consult, as the case might be. I find it incredible that we think 100 responses to a consultation is a credible response. So one of my key things will be I will be employing a communications officer, and that communication will be all about 2 ways. I've already said I'll be doing quarterly mayoral town hall type meetings, but we have to have a way to seriously engage with different groups. And we also have to have a way in which we seriously talk about commensurate consultation. If we're consulting on something like climate change, then that's worth 100,000 for a citizens panel, that type of thing. If we're discussing whether we should have red or green paint on the door there, then maybe that is maybe a quick questionnaire on MailChimp. But we have to create commensurate engagement. So I would also be looking to reach out to all these different age groups, because different age groups have different things. I want to hear from everyone. So in particular, for the younger age group, we already have at council, we have young people's councils, and I would be encouraging those, and I'd be going along to listen to what they have to say. So in terms of environment education, the education is a responsibility of the council, but more and more education on these areas is going through. I wouldn't want to subvert what they do, but I will be positively an influence to encourage that. And as I said before, all the team in the combined authority will have done carbon literacy training as a minimum. Thank you.
Thank you. I've already said I'd be proud to be a champion for the region, but also part of my role I see as being a voice for the region, and that's very much a piece to do with messaging and engaging with all of the residents, and in particular with regard to the younger adults. That messaging needs to be done quite precisely to be ensured that we engage and that the message is relevant. So it will be TikTok, it will be whatever social media platform they're using at the time, and it constantly changes, but it will be, I will be tasking my communications team to ensure that they are using a relevant message and that it's targeting the right people in the right way. I'll use influencers that the children and the young adults actually relate to. It probably won't be me, to be honest. I need to find out just every which way they tick. I have 3 teenage children, so I do have a bit of a head start on that front. But I'll also, in a very conventional way, will engage all the groups and the organisations that represent young adults, the schools, the community groups, the sports associations. They'll be bombarded, really, to be honest. In terms of ensuring that they are engaged, then yes, we do have the Youth Council. It needs better support. It was disappointing that it is very disappointing that it's been that the Hustings, the Youth Council Hustings for Saturday afternoon, have been cancelled due to lack of support by the candidates, and I do think that's sending out a really negative message. So I have been trying to set up a Youth Council in Ripon since I've been a county councillor, and as mayor I would continue to promote that to ensure that young adults do have an opportunity to engage and have their voices heard.
I think Felicity, if you're talking about the Youth Council actually is on Saturday afternoon in York.
The Hustings have been cancelled?
No.
Yes, they have.
Well, I know that's bad, but I'm going. There's 60 to 70 students coming along.
The Hustings have been cancelled.
Oh, right, okay. Right, anyway, there is a meeting because I'm going. I'm the only candidate going along. I've gone to every Hustings so far. I am on TikTok also, which for my campaign, I'm the only candidate on TikTok trying to reach out to young people. From the 70s, I was involved in clubs in Leeds, whether it be boxing clubs to get kids off the street, whether it be gardening groups, etc. In Nidderdale, when I chaired the Bloom group, I actually contacted the headmistress at Upper Nidderdale High School and said, you had a gardening club, I know, 20 years ago, you've got the greenhouses all falling apart, can you address the pupils and ask them if they're part of our Bloom campaign? And the headmistress came back to me a week later and said, we've spoken to all the children in the assembly and nobody wants to bother coming. So I said, can I come and talk to the children? So the following week I went and addressed the full assembly in the hall with all the teachers around the side and the headmistress. And to cut a long story short, the first Wednesday I said, parents, etc. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be starting with 1 or 2 volunteers. I hope you join us. We had over 20 students who came and joined us. One of those students was a young man called James Owen Thomas, Jot, if you've ever heard of him. Jot is severely autistic, and he is basically obsessed with litter and collecting litter, and particularly scratch cards, and he cuts them and punches holes and makes beautiful artwork with it. So I started mentoring James, and he's now Tree Council Ambassador. He was COP26 Youth Ambassador. He's got a display on at the moment at the Arboretum at Castle Howard. And this is how we get young people, because the young people are disengaged, and I understand that we need to start involving them, whether it be gaming clubs, boxing clubs, drama clubs, etc. If I am elected, those clubs will be free for these children to go to. And I've got high net worth individuals, charitable trusts, and businesses who see my vision and will donate that. I'm going to raise 5 million in the Mayoral fund separate to the 18 million pound in the first 12 months and start delivering on these. Some are existing clubs, cricket clubs and all sorts, who've got no support, and we need to give them the equipment, the backing, so the kids can go, and that's how we start getting the social disorder off the streets, because otherwise we don't. James Owen Thomas, look him up, a fabulous young man. He's only about 23 now, and I say he's done all those things already. He also did work for the Coronation, for the British Racing Association, where he still goes and does artwork from cutting their racing tickets up, etc. We need vision, we need imagination, then we'll engage with young people. Look at my TikTok and see how I'm engaging. I'm getting 2,000 and 3,000 views from young people, in North Yorkshire, by the way, not worldwide.
Thank you. We're going to move on to trees and nature, and a couple of questions here which I'll sort of pull together. So one from Michelle Emery and one from Clive Sabble. Just looking around the room to see if we've got them with us. Yes, lovely, great, Clive, that's good to see you there. So Michelle asked, how does each candidate feel about the continuing cutting down of trees in Harrogate and surrounding area? Please answer with their opinions on business development and housing. And Clive had asked, what are the candidates' policies on the growth of a network of new forests with emphasis on indigenous species and linking them with wildlife corridors? And we're starting with Paul, I think, now. Is that right?
Do you mind repeating that?
Yeah.
This is a very diverse.
Yeah, okay. How does each candidate feel about the continuing cutting down of trees in Harrogate and the surrounding area? Answer with your opinion on business development and housing. And what are the candidates' policies on the growth of a network of forests with emphasis on indigenous species and linking them with wildlife corridors?
This is going out of sequence, but it doesn't matter. I don't mind. I don't mind, because I'll get out of the way quite quickly. Cutting down of trees is not the answer unless they're diseased, and we have a number of diseased trees in the area, and but those are the trees that we should really be losing. We should be protecting our trees. I've forgotten exactly how much, but I think a tree at its full lifetime is worth something like £250,000 in terms of its carbon sequestration. We should not be letting trees go. Obviously, we have developments and we have to accommodate those, but we need to look at how we do this, and we need to look at the new local plan, which is going to be out for 2028. Not soon enough in my mind, but I don't want to get down that line. But what I would say is we should minimise the cutting down of trees, because when you plant a sapling, it's going to take it 10, 15 years before it's really doing anything in 25. On the other question that was there, networks of forests that are indigenous trees, I think that's absolutely splendid. And if we can work it, which we already are sort of working it with the cross-Pennine tree planting, and that there are corridors, then that I would support that entirely. And I do support it. Even now as it goes ahead, it's vitally important. This country is one of the most nature-denuded countries in the world. I think we're about 5th, and that's not a title I really would like. Finally, just on the school meeting that's at the weekend, I'm actually running the London Marathon this weekend, so I do feel I have an excuse because I'm travelling to London on the Friday, so I'm sorry I can't go to that. But if you go to my website, you can sponsor me, and I'm raising money for guide dogs. Thank you.
Is it me?
No. Yes, it's a tricky one, cutting down trees. My manifesto pledge supports sustainable economic growth, and I think the importance is on the emphasis of sustainability. There may be times where it cannot be avoided, but to cut down a tree, but we need to measure that against the prosperity that may generate, and the ability then for us to invest in the green economy and generation of green energy. And we also mustn't lose sight of the fact that if the offset is genuine and proportionate in terms of BNG and carbon credits, then we will see a more positive impact in that way as well. With regard to the growth network of forests, of course, that sounds like an excellent opportunity. I thoroughly support that. As I've already said, I think I might have said, my business is committed to increasing our forestry by 50% over 20 years, and I support anyone else who has the same ambition. Thank you.
Thank you. I've served on the board of the Nidderdale Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty Committee, and we were all about planting trees, wildflower meadows, bringing wildlife back into the area. I look at the majority of tree cutting down as vandalism, to be quite honest with you, and I think that, you know, we've got Rotary Wood locally, which they're wanting to people, you know, donated. That was supposed to be, you know, there for a lifetime, and they're talking about cutting the trees down. I totally disagree with that. It's all right saying about offset, where do you plant the trees? Take years and years to get to the stage that they're at. We've got Ripon Cathedral wanting to cut down aged trees. Totally wrong, I'm sorry. You know, we've got to protect nature, protect what we've got. It's part of our history. There will be occasions where you've no choice, but we should be actually planting more trees. So that's my view on it.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping those answers brief, because I want to try and squeeze in 2 more questions before we close. The first is around the circular economy, and we have a question from Stanley McIntosh, who is here. Should North Yorkshire Council cease and desist from pumping thousands of tonnes of cement into the ground, and consequently pumping thousands of tonnes of embodied carbon into our planet's atmosphere in their vain, unlimited and continuing attempts to stabilise the perpetually unstable Gypmund karst land at Camp Base Ripon, upon which metastable land they have built a swimming pool and leisure centre in willful contravention of the current local plan regulation policy NE9. And that's quite a specific question, but you might want to broaden that out to think about what immediate steps should a new mayor take to promote reduced use of mined minerals, including fossil fuels, and promote the use of recycled and reclaimed materials. And we are starting with...
I'll go, because that was you.
Oh, okay, Felicity, thank you.
Yeah, I'm afraid I can't answer the specifics of that question, but I can, on a more general note, say that yes, of course, as Mayor, I do support the circular economy. I've spent quite a lot of time in Moulton speaking to Sue Jefferson about all that she has achieved there, and I'd like to see that rolled out across the region in all communities. In terms of ceasing to use concrete, I'm very aware of what Yorkshire are managing to achieve with their research at the moment in terms of using plant-based alternates in our building materials. They are at a critical stage in their research where they need more funding. So as Mayor, one of the very first things I would do is to give them the assistance they need in order for them to develop that further. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got to be critical again, I'm afraid, but it's gross incompetence by our leaders, because they knew about the sinkholes around Ripon, they were advised about it, they still forged ahead, they're pumping concrete in that. I understand they aren't even halfway there because they can't be sure how long it's going to take, and the last figure I heard was 350 tonnes of concrete gone into that hole, and we're only not even halfway there. So it's a disaster, and it's like typical of a lot of the councils, that even though the situation is lost, they're still pumping our money into it. So in relation to other things, circular economy, recycling, yeah, there's new methods, new materials, etc. We need to, again, start being a little bit more visionary, listen to not the consultants, but some of the actual people who work in that field, and I'm sure we can change the way that things are done in York and North Yorkshire, and it certainly will happen if I'm elected.
So I'm going to ask you to listen to the consultants, because I'm a consultant. And what I'm going to say to you is that one of the key things I consult on these days is ESG, environment, social and governance. And one of the things that I help business change with is how to embrace the circular economy. The circular economy is about, instead of the linear economy where we dig something out of the ground and then we throw it away at the other end, it's about how we, at every stage of production, we take out the waste. We take out the waste if there's, I don't know, if there's edgings, and we recycle that back into the feedstock. We take the waste out at every stop, and we also build to last. And once it's finished its life, the first thing to do is repurpose. The final thing to do is to recycle. But if it's built correctly so that it's easy to recycle, like somebody like Dell computers, their Dell computers have all been redesigned so that they can be recycled once their use is finished. So one of the things that I'm going to pledge, and it's already in my manifesto, is I'm going to create a waste-free Yorkshire. And the waste may not necessarily go back into the feedstock of the company that's generated it, but, for example, a farmer with, let's call them misshaped potatoes, because we love our nice shaped potatoes, but that waste product could go to the gin factory that's over the road. So we've got to be smart, and we've got to adopt the circular economy, and I am looking for a waste-free Yorkshire. Thank you.
Thank you. And last question of the night is on a topic that is very close to the heart of Zero Carbon Harrogate. I mentioned our retrofit project at the beginning. And Dorothy Gray has put in a question. Thank you, Dorothy. Asking, how do we help people to adapt their homes to changing weather? Heat pumps, cavity wall insulation, loft insulation. Do we have enough skilled workers in this field? And it is Keith to start this time.
Well, clearly we don't have enough skilled workers in this field, and that's why we need to create, as part of the economy, businesses which actually do this, and certainly for young people, the training opportunities. And I say not everybody's academically going to go off to university. We need to offer courses where they can be trained how to retrofit, whether it be insulation, whether it be ground source heat pumps, whether it be solar panels. It's an industry, it's a trade that we can develop on, and it's really people who are unemployed, training opportunities, and that's what the Mayor in adult education, working with the schools, the colleges, the universities, can offer courses, some kind of qualification, so we can start actually rolling it out and retrofitting properties.
Thank you for the question. I mean, this is a huge opportunity for us to generate new businesses here in Yorkshire. The first thing is, and Keith's quite right, we need to train people up in these skills, because we have to have enough people that are able to retrofit houses or to make sure that they are built to the highest standard in the first place. And I've been talking to the Housing Association, and one of the areas where we can really start to look at this is we've got 50,000 houses that are in the Housing Association. We can look at building a business there that retrofits. Because one of the things a business needs is it needs customers. We've got 50,000 sat there. We can create a business because we've got a sufficient volume, and then we can turn it to what I would call the private sector, because we've been able to set it up and run it. The other opportunity we've got from this is that we can then actually turn around and say, well, how do we make the materials? Because we've got a lot of houses to retrofit, and one of the blocks at the moment is getting the materials from wherever they're coming from in the world. So why can't we build them locally? And we have an opportunity to build a great business around this, and it's something that is on my radar. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we don't have enough skills in this area. My ambition is to have more construction villages, which are very much more focused, specific training centres. And of course, with my transport system, I'll make sure that there's transport available to them to ensure that those who want to train or retrain can reach that destination. One of my pledges is to improve the apprenticeship scheme, so that to make it more flexible, make it better funded, and to also make it more accessible for those who want to retrain halfway through their career. This isn't just a scheme for those who are leaving school. As well as there's a shortage for installation, there's also a shortage of servicing, so it's the skills across the board that are missing. I would add one thing with regard to the installation point, which is, having discussed this with the housing associations. One of the barriers that they face is inconsistency in planning, because they are, where they can, using external insulation practices rather than internal, which does require planning permission, and there's some really widespread inconsistency across the region. And as Mayor, with access and the ability to influence planning, that would be one of the first things I would look at doing to ensure that this can be delivered at scale as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all three candidates for the way that they have tackled those answers. There's a lot of talking, and I'm really sorry, because if we haven't managed to get to your question, we did have more questions, but we haven't managed to have time to address all of them. And I hope the candidates will be willing to have if you're bursting with a question, be able to speak to you at the end. I just want to give them each a couple of minutes, and again, I'll put the timer on so that we do keep it to a couple of minutes. The opportunity to say their closing piece before we round up for the evening. So we start with Paul. I think I've got this right now. I haven't cracked this evening, have I? So we start with Paul to close. And I'll put the timer on.
Okay, I'll be as brief as I can be. So look, it's your decision on May 2nd to decide who will deliver for North Yorkshire. But my credentials are over 40 years in the retail trade, with 20 years as a strategic consultant delivering change. I have 20 years experience as an executive coach delivering personal change. I've been a councillor for 10 years. I've learnt how the councils and how the public sector works, because it doesn't work like the private sector. Maybe it should, and that's one of the things that I would like to be bringing to it. I also am the climate change champion for North Yorkshire and will continue to champion climate change. I chair scrutiny of transport for the North, so I'm fully aware of a lot of the transport options, and that was my committee that brought together all the social inclusion. So you've got someone here who's committed to net zero, a transition in a just way, someone with the passion and the courage, the skills and the expertise to deliver what I promise. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to use this moment for me to talk about one thing which I haven't been asked about this evening, and I really was hoping I would be, and that's to do with natural flood management, because that's one of my key manifesto pledges. It's one of the things that I think I'd be able to deliver sooner than many of the others. So in brief, my natural flood management scheme is a commitment to deliver this across the whole catchment for the rivers Nid, the River Swale and the River Yore. Many of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with the natural flood management scheme practices, but I've seen this demonstrated in Pickering. It increases biodiversity, it cleans our water, and also it reduces our incidences of flood. It reduces the need for concrete barriers, and in Pickering it reduced the incidence or likelihood of flooding in 1 year from 25% to 4%. So I would, I just want to draw that to your attention, because that would involve a large-scale amount of tree planting and a massive improvement to our biodiversity across the whole region. I hope you've heard enough from me tonight to understand a little bit more about where I'm coming from in terms of my commitment with regard to the environmental issues, and with regard to my skills and my ability to deliver them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Something we haven't talked about is wildlife. I'm actually known nationally as a raptor champion, and that is because I've been involved in working with the police on Operation Owl, etc., to try and stop, certainly Niddale and North Yorkshire is one of the worst areas for raptor persecution, being poisoned, trapped, shot at, and unfortunately it continues. So that is something I think is relevant to what we need to deliver. I have a background, as I've said, a police officer, business banking for 10 years, retail business, community, and I'm honoured to say that I got awarded the MBE in 2018 for my services to business and the community. I am not a politician, as you most probably can tell, and I certainly believe, unfortunately, all the other candidates come from that background which I mentioned earlier. They're either part of a political party or they're councillors. It needs somebody now to come in and who is going to work with the councils, but also stand up when necessary, because they are building an empire which they want to keep control of, and the people are getting less and less. So we need to take and grasp this opportunity to actually deliver real change. I've got the background, whether it's to do with transport, environment, community, to show that my track record is not talking like the other candidates about what they're going to do. I've actually done it, and the model works because it's the broken window syndrome. If you leave a broken window, the next one gets broken, then the one after that, then there's graffiti, then there's dog fouling, litter, etc. It needs, and that can be rolled out, and the same with the transport bus systems that are brought to Nidderdale. They can be rolled out to whether it's Selby, Skipton. They're all bespoke, each of these areas, and it needs looking at in what those community needs, but it's listening to the people themselves, because at the moment the politicians are trying to divide people and divide how we operate. So I will want to bring people together and say, I am here as a servant of the people, and I will serve the people, not the politicians, and I'll do so without fear or favour for anybody.
Tinkling away all night. Thank you very much. I'm not sure whether the candidates realised that as well as having this amazing audience tonight, we actually have our patron in the room, and I'm going to embarrass him now, Professor Piers Forster, who is actually currently the interim chair of the UK Climate Committee, which is the body that advises the government on its policies, independently advises the government on its policies on climate change. We'll have to seek Piers's wisdom later, but no, it's lovely to have Piers with us. Piers is a Harrogate resident, and it's great to have him on board with Zero Carbon Harrogate. And if you have heard a little bit about Zero Carbon Harrogate and would like to know more, or you've got any questions for us, as you go out, Tim has a clipboard where you can write your queries or questions for us, and please do that. As we close, I'd just like to thank a few people. I'd like to thank Julian and Wesley Chappell for hosting us this evening. Thank you very much for providing all the facilities. I'd also like to thank Tom Barrett and Tim Cook from the local press for being here tonight. It's really important that what's happening is reported, and Tim's actually been recording this evening, and that will go up on the Informer website at places, and that's really important for local democracy being more widely spread, so thank you very much to them. Last but not least, I'd really like to thank very sincerely our three candidates who've been here today, Paul and Felicity and Keith, and to wish them well with the remainder of the campaign. I imagine it's a very hard and gruelling programme that they have to go through towards the 2nd of May, and just to wish each of them well through that process. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for coming, and do spread the word to ensure that as many people as possible vote on the 2nd of May. Thank you.
Thank you, Jemima.